Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. And for a select few, good evening. And welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. I am your host, Jason Miles. And if you are new to the program, please hit the like, please hit the subscribe, and please hit the bell as we are constantly adding new programming to the channel. Like Monday, we'll be doing another episode of our leftist sports show, Beyond the Red Zone, with Marcus and Mac. Constantly adding video essays and recap shows. And if you're a patron, back to doing movie night. So excited for that. Welcome. Shout out to the homie. I guess we're early enough for the homie today. Napoleon the Legend recognizes the background for those that know that kind of first, maybe second wave, you might say, of anime that hit the States in the 80s. Our guest is going to be coming in a little later than usual, but I do want to get you guys ready for what we're going to talk about today. It seems states with far-right Republican state legislatures are drafting some draconian laws regarding youth, trans rights, and abortion. Idaho and Texas have garnered the most media attention of late. Recently, Idaho passed a law with an overwhelmingly majority vote, making it a felony to provide gender-affirming care to minors, punishable by life in prison. Texas is attempting to adopt a similar law, citing gender-reaffirming care as child abuse, calling for the child seeking care to be removed from the parent's care and placed into an already overburdened foster care system. Both bills also criminalize seeking care out of state. Quote, major national medical associations, including the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American Medical Association, support gender-affirming care for youths. As Human Rights Campaign State Legislative Director and Senior Counsel Catherine Oakley said in the statement Tuesday, new research has found that such treatment reduces the risk of moderate or severe depression by 60% and suicidal thoughts by 73% in transgender young people. In the Common Dreams article came out recently on the 9th. Missouri is attempting to pass a bill that would ban pregnant people from leaving the state for abortion care, since in 2019 they banned abortions after 8 weeks. Further addendums and bills are in the works that would ban abortion in later terms, 14 weeks, 20 weeks, and so on, if this new 8-week bill gets knocked down. Did the passage of marriage equality teach the right a better strategy in the culture war? While many on the left debate the merits of electoralism, the right is packing state offices and school boards, trying to do everything from erasing ethnic studies from basic curriculums to weaponizing citizens against each other with these oppressive and discriminatory laws. Constantly in a defensive position, what is the best way we on the left should mobilize against these laws? Does the overly authoritarian approach strengthen the Democratic Party on a national level as a scare tactic? We'll discuss. Let us bring in the panel, and I will start with my homie, my dog, the man of the Mau Mau Hour. He is the
Yes, y'all. Peace and greetings to the chat, peace and greetings to the audience, peace and greetings, Jason Miles. Happy Saturday to you all.
Yes, I enjoy Saturday because it's the one day I leave my very dark room doing this. Then I get to go outside and sit on the terrace and enjoy coffee.
That's what's up.
In my gorgeous view of the ocean here in sunny Baja. And coming all the way live from a new secret location in an even blacker part of town. He's back in his old stomping grounds. Marcus of the Left Flank Vets.
Coming live from my older brother's office, and he's a huge nerd. So nerds take in what you can in the background. I don't know where these things come from. I did just see The Batman, though, and I think the best part was the Ohio State jokes that came from it. Wasn't
There was
impressed.
Ohio State jokes in the new Batman?
No. There's just jokes that came off of it, and that was the best part of the movie.
I was about to say,
I haven't seen it. I've seen enough. The two things I don't need to see ever again is another Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. The first two, that's all you need. And another Batman movie, or a reboot of Spider-Man. Let's just leave Spider-Man where he is. We're fine.
When you said they made Ohio State jokes, I was like, was Batman written by a Michigan grad? I mean,
no, it's
Tom Brady wrote it.
The Batman,
By the way, I didn't get an opportunity, but I want to say shout out to fan of show, friend of show, my Parlez-vous Français brother, Napoleon the Legend. Shout out to Napoleon.
Yeah.
So you put up a new video on your Instagram with some hot beats and dope bars, Napoleon.
As usual. That gentleman pumps out more music than anyone else I know, and it definitely makes me feel lazy as shit. And if you ever want to know why I always feel the need to do more, it's because I'm watching that light-skinned son of a bitch put out like 7 albums a year. So that's fine.
At least. At least.
Just killing it. He kills it. I have nothing but the utmost respect for everything that he does, because it is.
Napoleon is cool. It's cool. Oh, Joanna H. Long time no see.
Joanna H. is in the house. Let's give it up for Joanna.
Dr. Claw in the house, in the building.
I do. So we were going to do this a little later in the show, but since our guest actually hit me up very politely, said, "Can I come in a little later?" Our guest actually is in Texas right now for South by Southwest, because they were the co-producer on a movie involving Meryl Streep.
Oh, that's what's up.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But yesterday I was having a wonderful conversation. And by wonderful, Crüe likes to call me when he's making a long drive and kind of poke me to rant, like get in an angry rant. Like, you guys don't get to hear a real deal angry. The people off on the screen have heard an angry Jason rant, but he pokes for angry rants. And somewhere along the line in our angry rant, he's a very cerebral cat, so his angry rants aren't the same. He had made a comment about colored folks and the need to have a certain coonish sidekick on some of these shows. And I gave my explanation, and it sent me down a rabbit hole for an old film that I watched some time ago. And I sent it to Marcus and Mac. I think Marcus was asleep, but thank God for Mac's staying up late ass. And I said, I'm thinking about showing this to Pascal, because I think it might just set him off in a comedic flurry of what the fucks. This movie is based off of a play. I like to call the play White Fragility the musical, because it literally is that book in like movie/play form. And I think I found the perfect part of the film. I watched this last night. I literally jumped off my couch. I ran around it, and then I was like, timestamp, show this to Pascal. So if you guys are familiar with the show Sex and the City and Sarah Jessica Parker, here's Sarah Jessica Parker. In this film, she plays the dean of students for a predominantly white liberal arts college in Burlington, Vermont. I don't know how many of you guys have spent time in Burlington, Vermont. Beautiful place. Great music venue there called Nectar's. Love it. But she plays a dean of students that left a predominantly black college in Chicago. And in this scene, she's ranting about dealing with the black students in Chicago and discussing why she left the Windy City for the whiteness. Burlington, Vermont.
Last choice, a black man. And sometimes, if the only empty seats were next to black men and if they were wearing big puffy coats, then I would just stand. And then I started adding categories: white men, then Hispanic, then Asian, then Middle Eastern, and then finally, and always last, black man.
Thanks.
Well, I felt terrible about it at first. I'd get on the train and I'd wonder, what must that poor black man be thinking? I'm so obviously avoiding him. He's a perfectly nice person sitting there. I can see his face. But I just didn't want to take a chance. And then after a while, it sort of slipped my mind to feel bad about it. And then everything slipped my mind, so that when I found myself sitting across from my students thinking that they were scary, or that their hair was stupid, or it was no wonder they were pregnant, I knew I didn't care. I just felt tired, contemptuous. They weren't going to listen to me. They weren't going to graduate from college. They weren't going to do anything with their lives, not because they couldn't, but because they didn't want to, because they were lazy and stupid.
Yo, what?
Because they were black.
Whoa! Whoa! Whoa!
The fuck?
And it started to scare me. For the career day coming up, I have some ideas for people that I would like to invite.
Hold on. Can we pause it for a second? Can we pause it?
Hold. This came out in the movie.
Marcus, you're missing the best part. This is the best parts coming up.
Oh my god! It's just I can only take so much. I feel like my heart is going to explode out of my chest.
Can I just give you the best part, and then you can go on your rant? Because I'm just gonna give you the floor.
I'm just trying not to die. Okay, play.
I'm gonna give you the floor because you got to watch this. Chat, please, audience, please. Let me get to the best part of this film. That when I saw it, this is the moment I jumped out of the couch, and I was like, "This is going to be a new segment on the show."
Lawyers who are actually recruiting. Hey, could you guys? Do you want to take your seats, please?
Come on, nigga, sit down. Give me that back.
Chill out,
Hey,
bro.
could you guys? Do you want?
Nah, man.
Could you guys?
Nigga, stop playing.
I mean, Jesus Christ, if you keep calling yourself niggers and acting like niggers, then why do you get so upset when we think you're niggers?
You said that to them.
This close.
Whoa!
It was leaving my mouth. I could see it in the air.
Trigger warning.
What year did that movie come out?
2007.
Obama, who was just on the verge of being post-racial.
It starts off with that character. She's telling. It's a very convoluted storyline that kind of gets confusing. It starts off where she's telling a Puerto Rican character who calls himself New Eurekan that he qualifies for a scholarship. And he starts off, she's like, "Oh, how'd you spend your summer?" And he's like, "Oh, I worked a job in New York and I made some money and that's how I'm paying for school." She goes, "Oh, guess what? There's a scholarship for outstanding minority students, and all your teachers are saying that you are outstanding and your grades are there. So I think you qualify. We're going to get you the scholarship." She goes, "There's one thing though. What is your ethnic background?" It says here you have other. He goes, "I'm New Eurekan." She goes, "Okay, so are you cool if I write Hispanic down?" And she goes, and the guy goes, "Well, what's wrong with New Eurekan?" She goes, "Nothing." She goes, "I understand, it means that you don't want to be called Hispanic because you're associating that with a colonizer. And he's like, yeah, I've never been to Puerto Rico, so I'm a New Eurekan. And she doesn't put that, and that starts the ball rolling for a Spike Lee-esque, a White Fragility-esque romp for 87 minutes.
This came out in the theaters
No.
in 2007?
No. It was made for Showtime. It was a play. It's still a play that you can watch.
This is not a movie in a movie theater.
It was made for cable.
This was made for cable TV?
Yeah.
I think that's even worse.
All-star cast. Oh, so what gets the racial tension going in the school is, and you find this out at the end, and I'm going to spoil the end. Who gives a shit? You guys aren't going to watch it. It's called Spinning into Butter.
Can we sue them? Can we sue them? I'm Lauren. I'm asking. Like, I want to sue them.
Which gives, like, that's it's like emotional damage. It can be linked to intent, right?
I saw Crash. I actually liked Crash when I saw it.
This Crash is a way more complex story than this.
Crash is not a bad
one-dimensional characters told through the lens of Sarah Jessica Parker's, very conflicted white woman. So a black student gets Sambo. Someone writes Sambo on his dorm door. And then that turns into someone writing like another term, racial slur. And then on the black dorm, because the dorms were segregated at this school, that makes it even better, right? On the black dorm, someone was about to write nigger, and he gets tackled by the black student. And you find out it was the young black kid who was the victim originally anyway. He was making all of this up because he felt that he was being treated like the other because of his color in this predominantly white school. He said that in the ending scene, and I won't play it, there's enough we've played, but in the ending scene, he's talking to the dean and all of the higher ups of the school, and they're like, well, why did you do it? He goes, because when I came here, my RA took me out to dinner every Tuesday, and my professors would come shake my hand. Yeah. What's wrong with that? That sounds pretty cool.
I mean, like, some of that shit you just say, no, I'm busy this Tuesday.
But he goes, you just want to call me a nigger. Just call me a nigger.
Man.
And I fell the fuck out. And I was like,
let me tell you something, man. First of all, I've never been a Sarah Jessica Parker fan. I've always thought she was profoundly overrated. But I'd like to thank you for giving me more reason to really hate this broad, quite frankly, because the fact that she would even take that role is like really, really increasing my contempt for her.
And oh my god, which did y'all see Jesse Smallett? Did y'all see what happened with him?
Yeah, I don't want to.
You got like 30 days.
I don't care enough.
I mean, that thing is like, how did we not walk into it? Did we just not walk into it though?
I don't listen. Let me tell you right now. I don't care enough about what happened to Jesse Smallett to talk about it. I was like,
fair,
some dumb shit.
Fair. But I didn't. I mean, if I had to go back in time and choose whether to get punished by some movie just as Jason is a sick fucker, I would choose not to do this. But here we are. What is Jason? What do you want? What do you want from us? What do you want from us? That's what I want to know. Like, why would you do that?
He told us beforehand. He literally wanted to play this clip to trigger me.
It's just rude. Like, I don't feel good. I don't feel good right now.
I mean, no,
I just want you guys to know that this is going to be a weekly I'm gonna find news
man, I don't
articles.
want you started the whole show off with a bad vibe. I don't want no bad vibe. Nah, man. I don't want. Nah, I'm not interested in that shit. Get the fuck out of here. What is that nonsense, man?
White people, are we gonna have to watch Drop the N-word? There's just gonna be a clip of that. It's just all the times post 2006 when white people should have known better, but they didn't. Is that it's just gonna be a reel of that? Fantastic.
Dude, tell me that you don't watch that scene and go, what the total fuck? And then when you step back for a second, you're like, oh, this is literally the white fragility book. This is damn near the movie Dear White People.
Yeah.
It's very similar to Dear White People.
I hated that movie too. I thought it was some dumb shit. I mean, the thing is, though, right? First of all, why is the black guy who's listening to her like, bitch, what the fuck is wrong with you?
He was trying to bang. Actually, that's the scene where he's trying to bang. And he's like, and he goes, so what's wrong? Maybe you don't like black guys. And she goes, that's not it.
Oh no.
It's the niggers.
Oh no.
And then she goes on this. So basically, that scene starts, like the whole movie is just filled with, you gotta be shitting me. That scene starts with the dean of the school tells her, look, the kids are fighting. They're mad about all this racist shit that's happening. We need you to make a 10-point plan, 10 bullet points of how we're going to end racism on campus. And Sarah Jessica Parker's like, you want me to end racism with 10 bullet points? She's like, 10 bullet points tomorrow morning, and we're going to have a student discussion and bing, bang, boom. And so she's sitting there and she's trying, that's when Micheletti, whatever his name is, comes in and he's trying to like, hey, so my dick don't get much hotter than this. And she starts telling him the nigger PTSD.
Yo, man,
and they end the movie shaking hands because, she's learned her lesson.
Fuck. What the fuck? Yeah, oh my God. What the fuck?
He's like, I'm going to take my blue balls and go.
There's a musical.
Man. It's Hollywood. That's
there's a musical about Guantanamo Bay, and it's like of the soldiers and shit. I think it's called Bad Apples.
That's about Guantanamo?
Yeah.
Are you fucking serious?
Or maybe it's Abu Ghraib. One of
That's
them.
That's not better.
Yeah. But I mean, maybe theater in general was just a mistake. I don't know. I'm just like rethinking. Maybe.
Joanna says, "I'm just sitting here quietly."
Man, the movie is racist as hell. Hollywood is a racist place. I mean, it's just not. What can I tell you? This shit is ridiculous. It's offensive. It's insane.
But I want you to know something. There's a ton of these movies. I think I might have seen them all. And I'm willing to cut little clips of all of them every week.
I don't want to see that.
2 weeks in a year, I will definitely make it a point to laugh my black ass off 52 motherfucking times.
Yo, I don't want to see that bullshit, man. No, man. It's not
like
funny
for real, like my bones.
Shit is not funny to me, man. Yo, straight
my
up.
My bones hurt. Like I can feel my bones in pain because of what you did.
Was I married in 2007? I think I was married in 2007. I'm pretty sure. No. I don't know what I was doing in 2007. Whatever it was, Gigi, it wasn't good. But I love cinema.
Well, number one, I don't love cinema. I don't like pop culture. So I mean, because of shit like this.
Yeah. It's like wiping your ass and saying, I love art.
The comments on this are look, for one, I'm only going to do this for a limited time, but we have to look at some of these comments that are coming up right now because they're fucking Hilarious. Someone says Jason woke up and chose violence.
What I feel.
Like,
God damn.
the
I'm
GG
not
album.
interested in like having to randomly see white people treat black people like shit on screen, man.
We got to get out of this thing. Is the guest here now? Maybe
Our
we
guest
should.
is still a little tardy to the party.
Oh my lord!
Gigi says cis white women need help. Yeah, cis white women do need help. They need help.
That's what I'm saying right now. Number one, I'll be very honest with you. I don't believe in generalizing like all white women, because that's just listen. That character, though unfortunately she is a prototype that is very common, is racist.
Mhm.
A lot of people are racist. A lot of white people are racist. A lot of people from a variety of ethnic groups are racist. But I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of like, all white women, all white this, all black this, all that, because it doesn't really help the problem. But yes, there are a lot of white, and quite frankly, there are a lot of white women or men who are teachers who behave like that or think like that. I had some of them in high school. But I mean, the bottom line is, racism is very real. And the fact that we live in a society where unfortunately there's no encouragement to teach people why that kind of worldview is problematic. And you know why there's no encouragement to teach people that kind of worldview is problematic? Because you have Negroes like John McWhorter, Glenn Lowry, and Thomas Sowell who essentially, yeah, she's right. It's the culture of these Negroes that makes them act that way. On Manhattan Institute or Hoover Institute dime. And you have a whole generation of Negroes today who's like, oh, yeah, I love Thomas Sowell, man. He speaks the truth. Because it's always easy to find some Negro who hates poor and working class black people.
You're looking at him right now.
And validate it.
I think our guest is here. And if it makes you guys feel any better, we can move away from the uncomfortable discussion of racism and to the more.
My mom, I can't even show this episode to my mom, man. She was like, "Why you cuss so much? Why you cuss so much?"
Gave him what he wanted.
You have to tell your mom you curse so much because Jason made you do it. That's fair. I will take that L. Mrs. Robert, I will take the L today because I forced your son. He has been very good about cursing. He has even got on me off and on air about cursing, and rightfully so. So I'll take this L. I instigated it, but Mrs. Robert, I'll raise you with this. Everyone likes to see your son get animated, and the best way to do it is by showing him white women yelling the N-word.
No, actually, it's not the best way. It's really just.
It's the best way. It's the best way.
I'm glad I have more reason to not like Sarah Jessica Parker, though. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I thought I saw our guest, and now I don't see our guest.
I always thought Sex and the City was overrated. Never liked it.
Well, I thought our guest was here. I guess she is not.
Did she disappear?
She might be having Wi-Fi issues. The writer of that play is a white woman from Birmingham, Alabama, and she notes the great Wallace Shawn as one of her influences.
Wallace Shaw. Wallace Shaw is.
I believe that's the guy from The Princess Bride. The poison scene. No. Anyone? Oh, there we go. So the star of the show is here, Esperanza Fonseca is a union and community organizer, filmmaker, and writer. We will add that to the resume as well. Member of the anti-imperialist feminist organization Affirm, and one of the few people that I know in real 3D life. We've shaked hands. Does Esperanza remember that? Do you remember the handshake? Actually, I think we might have hugged because I'm a hugger. Please welcome Esperanza Fonseca.
Hi, Jason. Hi, everyone. It is nice to be on and see you again.
Peace, greetings, and salutations, Esperanza.
First and foremost, you are in Tejas right now, correct? Or at South by?
Yeah, so right now I'm in Texas. We have a film premiering. It world premiered last night. It's called Sell by Date. The director is Sarah Jones. Executive producer is Meryl Streep. And it's a film that explores the debate over whether or not the sex trade is empowerment or exploitation.
Oh,
wow, you're just
coming
really
out the gate with fire already.
You're jumping off the deep end of the pool with the first film, huh?
Yeah, and I'm sure you all know from my last appearance, which sort of stance I would take on that, but we do explore all sides of the debate.
How was the reception? Has it been premiered already?
Yeah, so the world premiere was last night, and people seem to really love it. You know, it was a sort of hybrid format between a documentary and a narrative film.
Really?
So there were, you know, some scripted parts, but all of the interviews were unscripted, and all of the people in it were real. And you know, there were some, you know, comedic points in the film, but there was also a lot of very serious, emotional parts in the film. And
Was it a tough
we
watch
also
for
have, you know, in addition to myself co-producing and appearing in the film, we also have comrades from the Red Nation movement, who I hope folks are familiar with, that also appear in the film, as well as a woman from the Black Alliance for Peace. So the anti-imperialist left is represented in this film.
Who's from? I'm a member of the Black Alliance for Peace. Who's in it from Black Alliance for Peace?
So one of the women in our film, Sade, she's from the Black Alliance for Peace. She's not particularly representing them in the film, but she's a member.
I am a member as well. That's really awesome. Okay.
We're trying to cover all bases, Pascal. All bases.
Got it all.
So, how does it feel watching yourself on the big screen in a room full of people? Is it nerve-wracking? Is it reliving some trauma sometimes when you see probably a story that you participated in the creation of to some extent? What was that like to watch that play out on screen and see people's reaction to it?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, I think that it can always be sort of hard to see yourself on screen. We're all sort of critical about how we look, but I think that as an organizer, we realize that it's not about that. It's about whether or not we can propagate our message and embed it in the masses. And so to be able to do that is always an opportunity that we have to seize whenever it comes up. In terms of, you know, reliving some of the, you know, hardest moments of our lives on film in front of what might potentially be millions of people, people need to hear this. You know, the big corporate pimps have their propaganda, you know, pushing 24/7 on all of us, adults, youth, everyone. And so we need to have our propaganda also sort of being pushed out there. And what I mean by propaganda is our stories, right? Our stories and our analysis of what happened to us in as many places as can be. You know, one of the interesting things about the film is that in the hotel that we filmed my scene in was actually a hotel that a man pulled a gun on me at. And so, you know, it's a little re-traumatizing, but we do what we have to do to get it out there.
That's insane. And
Yes.
we have a new segment that you probably missed called Trigger Warning, where I just do things to piss off my co-hosts. It's not as serious.
No, we don't. We don't know if that's a new segment. That's something that happened today. That's not a new segment. It's not a new segment. That's something that occurred today.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about a few things. I definitely wanted to get in your movie with you, but there's also the last time we spoke via text, you had told me about some activism work that you were doing in Oregon. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so right now, the multi-millionaire son of commodities trainer, of a wealthy commodities trader, his name is Aaron Boonshoft. He is an admitted sex buyer, sex tourist. He introduced a ballot initiative and is funding it in Oregon in order to legalize pimping, brothel owning, and sex buying. And he is doing so under the guise of what he calls sex worker rights. And so we are in Oregon attempting to defeat that bill, or rather that ballot initiative, in order to actually introduce, what we believe is the correct approach, which is to decriminalize all people trading access to their own bodies, all people who would identify as sex workers, but not to expand the legal rights of the exploiting class in the sex trade, which are the pimps, the traffickers, the brothel owners, and the sex buyers.
Interesting.
You want to follow up on that, Pascal or Marcus? You guys look like you want to say
No,
something.
I mean, I find the I don't have a particular pony in this race either way. I generally understand sex work as an exploitation and extraction, generally of women, particularly as a form of class extraction, and generally a form of capitalist exploitation and oppression. Not only capitalist, but economist, if you will. It's an economic form of extraction and oppression. I don't think it's an accident that there is a class and economic correlation between the people who will end up in sex work. Generally, I know there are exceptions, and the and the backgrounds they come from. What's fascinating to me is that in this contemporary moment of the digital online left and the way in which certain phenomenon become progressive intellectual topics, simply stating that you don't think it's positive to have a society in which economic necessity renders women to be sex workers gets you called a swerf, which is a term that I recently had to learn. And I'm saying that, okay, let's get some context. Is it possible for a human being, male or female, because there are male sex workers, is it possible for a human being to optimally, as a career, want to be a sex worker without the coercion of socioeconomic or personal traumatic experience? In other words, is it possible that an upper middle class, white male from 5 generations of Anglo-Saxon blood and lineage can wake up one day and say he doesn't want to be a CEO of, Bain Capital, and instead his dream has always been to be a male escort, a sex worker? And is it possible that that person exists? It's not impossible. Yes, it's not impossible. Okay, I get that. Is that the normative way in which human beings that become sex workers actually engage in that industry? My simple question and response to those who say swerve, whatever, is that let's just look at empirical analysis. Let's be a little empiricist. Okay. What is the socioeconomic background of contemporary American or global sex workers? Okay. In other words, what is the socioeconomic background? I think it's fair to say most of them probably come from the lower socioeconomic strata. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I'm sure a quick Google search could have us concur that's the case. So, first empirical analysis, most sex workers come from lower socioeconomic background. Number two, what is the normative gender of most sex workers? Sex or gender? I would say that the sex of most sex workers are probably female, and I would say that the gender of most sex workers are female presenting individuals, which means that they can be trans men who present, well, trans women who were born males who present as females. I think that's a logical, empirical analysis. So we have two factors here. One, most of them are from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And two, most of them are by sex, biologically women, or presenting women. There's one factor that we can state based on those facts alone. The significant number of sex working people come from oppressed or exploited groups, economically downtrodden, or women or female presenting. Based on that alone, we're dealing with two groups who are generally exploited, particularly under capitalism. I don't. Am I Esperanza? Am I off in this kind of process?
Yeah, so I think you are absolutely spot on. And the only thing that I would say is, I don't think it's simply in the United States, even in supposed European countries that are social democracies, we still see these same dynamics play out. For example, it is the women from the poorer countries that are traveling to the wealthier countries in order to, so-called work in the sex trade. And so, it's always sort of the same dynamic, which is that the people with the least amount of options and the least amount of choices and the least amount of freedom in society are the ones that are, being prostituted. And I think, one big example of this, for example, is, Hassan, the millionaire YouTube streamer, the brothel that he went to, Artemis brothel, most of the women there are actually not from Germany. They're from Eastern European countries. And so, we see this all across the world. And that's why I think that in the United States, where imperialist, capitalist propaganda is so strong, all we talk about now are centering the voices of the people that have the privilege to enter and exit as they please. But as as an organizer, as a socialist, I say, I'm sorry, if you have the privilege to enter and exit as you please, then maybe you need to take a step back from this conversation. And it needs to be those of us who were and are trapped in it that need to be the ones leading the fight and leading the conversation about this industry, because we're the ones who have experienced the true nature of the industry, including the majority of it. No. And that's why I also sort of, I think that it's class violence. It's not the children of the bourgeoisie that are the ones being sold on the street. It's the children of the working class, but it's also racial violence. Like Audre Lorde said, it's not, it's the children of poor women and women of color that are lining 42nd Street, not the children of wealthy white women. So it's class violence, it's racial violence, and it's also, sexual and gender violence. Okay, now, something shouldn't be a commodity.
Hold on, Pascal. We're going to pivot away for a second.
Okay.
There are, before you came on, Esperanza, I brought up some facts. I don't know how close you're watching us. I know you are busy doing a lot. But there are some right-wing laws and some bills and amendments that are being passed in some areas with some Republican-run state legislatures. Missouri, Idaho, and of course, Texas in the news once again. They were in the news earlier with their abortion ban, and they are in the news once again. But I think maybe one of the more heinous laws, trans laws I saw, was in Idaho, where it is punishable by a life sentence to get your kid gender reaffirming care. And that's a very big term that I think most people, when they hear it, think that it's just getting some sort of bottom or top surgery for a child. And it's not. Sometimes it's something as simple as therapy. It's as simple as painting your nails. Have you been following any of this, Esperanza?
Yes, I have. And, these laws are pretty frightening because trans children in particular already represent one of the most targeted groups, one of the groups that's most vulnerable to violence, to suicidality, to neglect, to abuse. And the fact that these fascist, far-right Republican lawmakers are targeting them and scapegoating them is deeply concerning for the safety of children that I know and love. Not just children that identify as trans themselves, but we see like huge amounts of anti-LGBT laws. I believe just anti-trans laws alone have already been introduced in over 35 states.
Yep.
Not to mention, the Don't Say Gay bill, which would also affect, children of
what is
or
Don't
trans
Say Gay?
parents.
What is Don't Say Gay bill?
The bill in Florida that basically restricts, conversation about sexuality and gender in schools. Which I also think, not to go on too much of a tangent, but I also think is so ridiculous because sex education is everywhere. Sex education does not just happen in the family; it happens everywhere. I was driving with my partner's 13-year-old cousin, and he pointed out this billboard of these three women that were turned around and these very sexualized images of their butts. That's sex education, right? That is teaching men about the sexual role of women, about how to interact with women, etc. And yet that's plastered all over. So sex education is happening everywhere. If it wasn't, then young boys wouldn't be indoctrinated into patriarchal rape culture.
Gotcha.
And with the Florida bill as well, it's like it puts the teachers in a absolutely precarious position because kids ask questions, and basically if teachers, and can say anything even about, hey, this this kid comes and has got two dads, like even answering, oh, well, it's a gay couple. There's people in Florida who could say, oh, hey, now you're giving some sort of sex education so it's also, just based on like heteronormative behavior and stuff like that. So
another thing these laws do is make regular citizens cops, right? Because you're supposed to report whenever you see some sort of gender reaffirming behavior in youth. And one question I asked in the beginning of the show, and you missed it, is if this is part of the culture war, has the right learned from losing the war against gay marriage? Because that dealt with adults and making a hard pivot to dealing with something that most people tend to agree on as protecting children, right? And I'm using that in air quotes. I don't necessarily believe that. I'm just using it in air quotes, but that's the fear factor that's involved, right?
Yeah.
Is protecting children.
It's a more charged political weapon.
Is this, when I see people in our world arguing over if electoral politics has any meaning, and they're always talking about it from a federal perspective and a presidential perspective, it seems like electoral politics is extremely important when we talk about discriminatory laws. Pascal.
I mean, listen to me. I think that Jason and I, off air, we've had conversations about the whole electoral politics is worthless. Don't vote. This is my position. Number one, why do people believe that they have the right to tell people what they should or should not do about their politics? For me and Jason, I think we agree. Our job is to give people political education. Explain the political system as it works, explain the political options, explain the cost benefit analysis of political participation, explain the ramifications of lack of political participation. Why is there such an urgency to say that, well, we, and as if, who are you speaking for as we shouldn't vote for X party, or we should, who are you that you're saying what we should do? I understand what you want to do. Why do you think that 42 million of X community should follow what you do in terms of your voting? Why do you believe that 46 million of X community should follow what you do in terms of your voting? My position is this: participation in the political process has limitations and it has benefits. One of the benefits of encouraging participation in the political process, even if you believe the system will never be able to bring you justice, is that it provides an opportunity for political organization and mobilization. If you agree that you suggest to your people to participate in the system to vote, one, it's a good time to take a census of how many people agree with your politics. Two, it's a good time to take a census as to how many people are interested in politics. Three, it's a good time to educate people as to why aspects of the political system may or may not be working with them. For them, excuse me. And four, it's a good time to educate people as to what are the potential capacity of the political system for forming in a way that meets their needs. Again, I'm not saying, oh, we should be electoralists. I'm not saying, oh, we should vote for the Democratic Party. I'm not saying we should vote for any party. What I'm saying is that from a tactical and strategic perspective, if you are interested in politics, I think the logic of encouraging voter participation is, at best, it is an effective period of organizing and mobilizing. I'd like to hear people's thoughts.
Well, I mean, I already agree, and that's the thing too. Is like the issue is more so that the people have a frustration that there's no organizational tool in order to get what people's political needs are, and that frustration, I think, comes out as like the lashing out of, hey, we just shouldn't do this thing that's not working for us. But it's kind of like, I think at one point a lack of understanding that this electoralism isn't the mode, was never the way to get us all. Like if you were just hoping that once Bernie gets in, that you got to lay back and utopia just gets built around you. You might be mistaken to begin with, and that mistake leads you to believe that this thing just doesn't work at all. But in which case, it's a lot more complicated than that, especially too when you get down to the local and state level. And there's if you're not even engaged with it, you're really not going to have an understanding of where marginalized communities are getting attacked, and especially now when it comes to these bills for anti-trans in Texas, anti-gay bill, don't say gay bill in Florida. There needs to now be a response from left organizers of how do we now make sure that these communities get what they need, because we know that the state is fucking them over. And at the very least, you need to be engaged so you can do that.
Esperanza, if you will indulge me, I'd like to use history as an educator in this moment, if you do not mind, because I would really like your input on this subject, because you may disagree, and I respect your right to do so. As I've been telling people for a while, I even put it on my Twitter, I've been a student and an admirer of a certain period in history in America called the populist movement, the populist era. The populist period was a period between the 1880s and the 1890s in the United States, particularly in the South, where there was a strong coalition of working class peasant farmers who were white and sharecroppers who were black, who were mobilizing not only mutual aid, not only economic challenges to Southern urban capitalism, they were also organizing to challenge wages, seed price, over 1.2 million black people, millions of white people doing in the Farmers Alliance, blacks in the Colored Farmers Alliance, who were literally, and I'm sure there was lots of racism, I'm sure there was lots of tension, but because they realized that the traditional two-party system of Democrats and Republicans did not work in protecting their economic interests, they came together and in certain localities created a fusion of populist Republicans or third-party options to dislodge the power of the two-party system. This particular period of time, this movement was such a threat that one of the motivations for realizing the need to neutralize the populist movement came through in Plessy versus Ferguson, which basically not only disenfranchised poor blacks, it also disenfranchised poor whites. So for me, when you say electoralism or voting has no purpose, I realized that if voting had no purpose, then why did we need a Supreme Court decision in 1896 to neutralize a movement that was literally threatening to displace Southern capitalism? As if we couldn't have something like that today.
Yeah, so I wanna respond to that, as well as a couple other things to give that context. So, first of all, connecting this back to the war on transgender children, folks at the ACLU, for example, are, seeing this as also a crisis of voter suppression. But I think that it goes much deeper than that. I think that it is, a sort of crisis of imperialism. Imperialism is always going to turn to fascism because the imperialists are always going to need to scapegoat ordinary working people for the crises of imperialism. And so right now we are seeing transgender children who are the ones being scapegoated, for the crises around the breakdown of the family, etc. And then secondly, I also see it as sort of a crisis of settler colonialism, or perhaps more of a feature of settler colonialism. You brought up the fact that ordinary citizens are being encouraged to investigate parents of transgender children. And they might even face, legal criminal repercussions if they do not report parents of transgender children. And this has always been a feature of the settler colonial state, which is that settlers have been deputized in order to enforce the laws of the settler state. And so I think that it goes far deeper than simply, voter suppression or, electoral politics. Now, the second thing is in regards to, the sort of left strategy around electoral politics. I mean, I don't believe there's any future in the Democratic Party for the left whatsoever. And I think those of us who might have been involved in the Bernie campaign need to just get real about that. What we need in this country is real working class institutions. And that's not going to happen in the Democratic Party. Instead of wasting our time on trying to get opportunists in the Democratic Party who are going to bait and switch us, who are going to talk a big game when they campaign and then get in the legislature and vote to fund the Iron Dome, repeat imperialist propaganda about countries like Venezuela, etc. I think what we need to be doing is building our own institutions, because that's how we build power.
Yes, but wouldn't you? But I hate to interrupt, but that's also a federal level. We're talking about the state level, and I think that's where the discussion about electoralism always tends to fall off. It's always spoken from a very federal perspective. So the state legislature that's stopping young kids from getting gender reaffirming care isn't the same person voting for Iron Dome. The person that's stopping women from getting abortions after 8 weeks and sometimes even trying to cancel out ectopic pregnancies that can kill women, these aren't the people that are voting for more military spending. So I'm talking about it from more of a perspective of not the federalism, but the local level, because that's where the war, in my opinion, is already taking place. If we're talking about changing the way curriculums look, we're going to take away even discussing slavery. As bad as it's discussed now, let's just take it all away. And like you even said earlier, we're going to take away even talking about saying the word gay. And let's bring in, to add to this fun-filled conversation, Djene Bajalan.
Hi, everybody.
He sounds like
how you doing?
Like a children's TV host.
But I agree. I agree on the federal level, and you will find no bigger supporter of the builder outer of institutions than me.
Yeah, but Jason, I do want to say, though, that I'm not just talking about the federal level. I graduated from the Women's Policy Institute here in California, where, we passed bills throughout the state legislature. We got to meet nearly every, elected in the state house here in California. I've worked on local policy, and I don't think that there is that much of a difference. We see this throughout the entire local, state, and federal level. I think that if the left in this country wants to get serious about being a powerful force, we need to start focus on building our own institutions, our own power. We don't need electoral politics to organize people. How many people have you gone out in your neighborhood and knocked on the doors in your neighborhood and organized people? Because you don't need an electoral campaign to do that. And electoral campaigns are very, very poor vehicles to do that. They're temporary. They're just not good for that. And I think, too, that one of the biggest problems with, being Americans is we suffer from American chauvinism. There are ongoing communist revolutions in the third world right now. The longest ongoing communist revolution being in the Philippines. Are we studying that? Are we learning from that? Or are we just completely ignoring it and, doing the same thing over and over again that hasn't worked? And particularly when it comes to the Democratic Party, whether you're talking at the local, state, or federal level, the problem isn't just the people in control of the Democratic Party. It is the structure of a bourgeois party itself. There's no real democracy in a bourgeois political party, right? That's why we talk about democratic centralism. We have more democratic, better ways of organizing political parties. And a bourgeois party like the Democratic Party is never going to let people like us take power of that party. And I think the sooner we get real about that on the short timeline that we have, the better.
I would like to interject, because I don't disagree at all with Esperanza's projections about the futility of the Democratic Party. I've never been a member of the Democratic Party in my life. I intentionally find it to be a repugnant institution, but at the same time, I don't discourage people who believe that they want to be Democrats from using the Democratic Party if they want to. If they believe that their interests lie within their party, I can give them the political education as to why I think that is incorrect. But if their interests lie in that party, then so be it. But I want to address one thing you said, Esperanza, about the organizing, and I will disagree with you. I'm not saying that elections are the best time to organize people for political results. What I'm saying is that they are a good time. And this is why I may disagree with you. I think they are a good time because Americans are generally apolitical in terms of their daily worldview. And the only times where they actually confront thinking about politics is around election season. And I'm not talking about just national elections, local, municipal, and so on and so forth. I also agree with you that dismantling the bipartisan system on a local level, or the hegemony of the Democratic Party, if you will, on a local level is fine. I don't disagree with that. I think organizing people to create third party left political options, I have no problem. This is my position. Let me make my position clear. My position is that I don't have a right to demand of people what their politics should be. My job is to give you a political education as what I think the politics that will help you get what you want. If after sitting with me for 4 hours every day of political education for 6 months, you say, "Thank you, Pascal. I agree with everything you said. I think for my interests, it's going to be to vote for the Republican Party." I'm not going to be mad at you. You know why I won't be mad at you? Because you might be a guy who owns 15 McDonald's and you realize that the tax cuts you're going to get from the Republican Party is better for your business.
But Pascal, isn't that? Like, I don't disagree with you on a personal level, but that's a kind of individual, like how you manage your personal relations and politics question. Like, yeah, I'm not going to get mad with the guy who owns a local business who I know socially because he votes for the Republican Party because, the water is wet. But I think we are raising a really important political question. And there's a couple of points I would, want to ask Esperanza. So when you say, when we talk about electoral politics in the United States, are you is your point to say we should disengage entirely from electoral politics, or that electoral politics should be maybe a second rung of a broader political strategy to build out political institutions? And my second question, which I would follow up on that with, is in terms of what these institutions look like. I mean, you're talking about the communist insurgency in the Philippines, which has been going on for decades and has ultimately has been contained and controlled since the 1980s. Now, I'm not saying you can't learn anything from the Philippines things, but how applicable in the social conditions and socio-political order of the United States are the lessons that one would learn from a guerrilla insurgency taking place in a predominantly agrarian society, the agrarian semi-colonial society. I'm not saying that there are no lessons, but I'd like to ask you, what concrete things do you think are we? I mean, are you saying we need to launch a kind of popular guerrilla insurgents across the Midwest to overthrow bourgeois power in the United States? Because I just don't think the socioeconomic order in the United States is amenable to that kind of social change. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, so there's a few things. The first thing is that I want to clearly state that the idea that the longest ongoing communist revolution in the Philippines is contained and controlled by the state is a state propaganda talking point. That is simply not true. There is an ongoing civil war, and in order for this revolution to have lasted for as many years as it has, they have to have support of the masses. That's how they continue. That's how they get their fighters. That is how you move a revolution, right? I think that when I talk about learning from them, I'm not simply talking about the active guerrilla fighters. What I'm talking about is look at their mass organizations. Look at how they have been able to organize people from all sectors of society, right? When we talk about the revolution, it's not simply about, the sort of underground, guerrilla fighters. We're also talking about, masses and masses of above ground legal activists who have built their own institutions. And so what I'm talking about here in the US is that, there's a few points that I want to say. Number one is that the majority of workers in the US are completely disengaged from electoral politics. They know that it's BS, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why when I talk to workers, if I bring up Democratic candidates, they're going to not want to talk to me anymore because they know that the Democratic Party is one of the most corrupt parties on the face of the planet, right? And they know that these candidates are extremely corrupt. And so we lose credibility when we push Democratic candidates or Democratic Party politics. What we need are institutions that are independent from the control of the corporate oligarchy, which does not include the Democratic Party or their institutions. And we need institutions that can take care of our people and organize them as we're doing that. And I don't think that's going to come from Democratic Party politics or from electoral politics. But I think we need to look at how these ongoing revolutions have been able to organize masses and masses of people from all sectors of society.
But again,
I will say this. Let me say this real quick, Djene. Let me say this. I know the Philippines somewhat well, and that I will respectfully push back on that point that that's a right-wing talking point because they don't control Manila. They definitely don't control any of the major islands. So while the archipelago is massive and there's definitely places where the insurgency does have some sway, it is a massive overstatement to say that it's a right-wing or Duterte-esque talking point that they have any sort of real power or control.
I mean, and I just want to add to that.
I said that it was a state talking point to say that they were contained and controlled. They are not contained and controlled. That's why the government is scrambling in order to attempt to, snuff them out.
Oh, definitely. There's definitely islands. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say there's not parts of the archipelago that they definitely control, but as a whole, I mean.
But these conflicts, there's examples, whether we look at the Revolutionary Armed Forces in Colombia, the PKK in Turkey, these movements are powerful, no doubt, and have managed to win a significant degree of popular support and are sustained by popular support, like to a certain degree. But at the end of the day, the political balance of power has long since shifted away from their ability to seize state power. Yes, the state still has to deploy a significant degree of violence, but many of these organizations, look at a powerful organization like the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka, which were, dominating vast parts of the country, but were ultimately crushed and repressed because the power, the military and political power of the nation state is extremely powerful. And the second point is, you may be right that talking to people in electoral politics about Democratic Party politicians just puts people off. People are sick of the two-party system. There's no doubt. People love brands in America. The brand Democrat and the brand Republican are at an all-time low. And if you start yammering on about this Democrat is different, people are going to say, just shut the fuck up, get out of my house. But if you're really going to start going up to people and talking about, whether it's unreconstructed Maoism from the Cultural Revolution, Abdullah Öcalan's theories of democratic confederalism, or high theory Marxist-Leninist to people, to workers, that too is not going to win people over. What's going to win people over, and perhaps I'm misunderstanding the point, is speaking to bread and butter issues and being able to deliver, because you can talk a big game. And at the end of the day, the best, you may reject, I think Jason has a strong point about federal politics. A lot of energy is wasted in federal politics. Like you say, Esperanza, these people end up going there and voting for the Iron Dome and voting for the empire, because what is federal politics? It's driving the empire car, right? But at a local level, there are concrete things you can deliver to people as a down payment on your ability. In the United States, we're not going to be able to seize a liberated zone from the state. They couldn't even maintain the what was it, the Chaz? The Chaz. We're not going to create a liberated zone where we can start sort of doing land reform and building socialism. We're going to have to demonstrate to people that we can deliver things. That includes concrete material goods, as imperfect as that is, as well as fighting against reactionary laws that lead to the abuse of trans people, of gay people, of women seeking abortions and things like that. I don't think we can simply enter into occultation and act as if we can disentangle electoral politics, which Pascal says that's how Americans think of politics. You have to go to where the Americans think of politics, and an electoral campaign is one of the few opportunities you can go up to people and get them to do things, perhaps also ballot initiatives and things like that. And the key question, and maybe again I'm wrong here, is to use the electoral campaign to build something sustainable rather than seeing the electoral campaign as an end in itself.
I guess my question also is Esperanza, and this is, it comes from a place of fear, to be honest with you. I mean, keep in mind, I no longer live in the States, right? I was telling you not too long ago, I moved to Mexico. How do you fight the rise of the far right? I mean, granted, it doesn't affect us in California the exact same way. It affects the middle of the country, and it is a very slow shift coastal. But I see it. I see it happening, especially in SoCal, right? Especially like Orange County. Orange County seems like it feels like it's doubling down on its right wingedness. I don't know when the last time you've been down in those parts but like, how do we fight this? And I understand the importance. Again, I think we all agree. No one is disagreeing on the importance of building institutions, but it almost feels like the institutions that people run to are like the Green Party or DSA, or maybe.
Yeah. So, I think that this really connects well to what we were talking about. So, the first thing I want to say too is that I just have to address this point, which is that, again, when I say we need to learn from the longest ongoing communist revolution in existence today, the US couldn't even get Bernie elected. The US left can't even sustain an anti-war movement right now to be able to do anything. And yet we're talking about a group of people who have not only been able to sustain an ongoing revolution with mass organizations organizing wide sectors of Philippine society, but we're also talking about being able to survive military repression funded by two imperialist world powers, okay? Do you understand how serious that is, to be able to survive military repression funded by two imperialist world powers? Okay, that is something we have to learn from. And that takes some humility from those of us who are Americans. The second thing is, in terms of being able to fight back against the far right and the rise of fascism in this country, we're not going to be able to do that unless we have militant, independent organizations. Neoliberalism fosters fascism. The Democratic Party is a neoliberal institution, and it will never not be a neoliberal, bourgeois, corporate, oligarchy-controlled institution. We have to build militant institutions of our own in order to defend against fascists and in order to fight against them. What we see is that, these far right people, whenever I agree with sort of Devin Zane Shaw's theory on fascism and the far right, which is that, it's very much connected to white supremacy, because when they feel that, their sort of white privilege, or that, their privileges of being, a citizen of a settler colonial nation is being threatened, that's when they turn insurrectionary against the state. But the state is never going to be able to snuff them out because they foster that kind of fascism, right? How else do the imperialists explain to the people the crises of imperialism? Well, they blame it on they scapegoat the everyday working person. And so it's this constant dialectic in that, the settler colonial imperialist state is always going to foster the rise of these far-right groups. And even where I live in California, we have Nazis. We have a KKK chapter that flyers in our neighborhoods. And you're not going to stop them by getting Democrats elected, no matter how great those Democrats are. You have to build militant organizations of people who are organized, who are trained in theory, who are physically strong and physically trained, and who are able to take back their neighborhoods if needed by force.
So basically, you're
What we're
telling me that
seeing
you're going to
is the
slap shit on me.
intensifying of contradictions, I believe, where it's getting much more militant like it was several decades ago. And we need to get organized, not simply into electoral apparatuses, but into militant organizations that are able to fight back. And real briefly, I don't know if you have seen on Twitter, my friend was abducted up in Oakland. And
she was found, right?
She was found. The police did not help. Without militant organizations that can defend our people, that can do this work ourselves, we are going to see an intensifying of these sorts of things happening. And without militant organizations, we're going to be powerless against them.
Now, what about infiltrating organizations like law enforcement, opposed to letting the right infiltrate law enforcement? What's your take on that?
Dangerous.
I don't think that works. When you're a law enforcement officer, you don't make the law, you enforce it. It doesn't matter who's wearing that badge. At the end of the day, you have to enforce the law of a white supremacist, capitalist, imperialist, settler colonial state. And we all know what that means.
Yeah,
I would add
if you infiltrate.
It's the same for a teacher, though.
Well, I think there's a qualitative difference here. I think I kind of agree with Esperanza. Like, there is something specific about law enforcement, and unless you have a disciplined party apparatus that can keep those people who are going into the law enforcement to act as like sleeper agents, unless there's a way to discipline those people, what's just going to stop them just being incorporated into the thing? I mean, you see it in politics, right? People go in with the best of intentions, but they get chewed up by the machine. And I think, if I understand Esperanza correctly, when you say militant organizations, you're talking about a revolutionary party or some kind of apparatus connected to a revolutionary party that can discipline people.
Well,
a revolutionary party is great, but I'm talking about militant unions, independent of the Democratic Party, militant tenant unions. I'm talking about neighborhood committees. I'm talking about all kinds of organization. And, in terms of the idea of infiltrating police, what are you going to do if you're a police officer? Let's talk about the issue of robbery. The highest amount of theft and robbery comes from corporations in the form of wage theft. Are you going to tell me that people are going to infiltrate the police and stand outside of corporate executives' offices in order to catch them doing wage theft? That's not even a crime. It's not even in the criminal code. So it's I don't believe there is infiltrating police. I think we need to create our own apparatuses, whether or not they're connected to a party, that can defend our people and that are based locally.
Well, I'll give you one example from the neighborhood or the area that we were just in, the Bay Area. Chesa Boudin came in, and the first thing that he did, whether you like him or not, was actually try to prosecute law enforcement. But what happens when you have a person like that and this kind of speaks to, and I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm kind of adding something to the point. And that is what happens when you do get your true leftist socialist thought into a position of power like district attorney that says, I'm not going to prosecute. I'm literally going to start letting people out, but they have no support from law enforcement. And now, I don't know if you've been following it, the mayor's office is definitely pushing back on a recall for him.
And that's natural.
I'd like to be. Can I interject? Please? I haven't said anything in a while. I want to say, please. We had Kali Akuno on our show a while back. I don't think anyone on the left is going to question the revolutionary bona fides of Comrade Kali Akuno. I am very sympathetic to Kali Akuno. My political education comes from the revolutionary left. And Kali Akuna made a very impassioned presentation about the inability of the Democratic Party and the fact that we have to, we have to have a more revolutionary and radical, plan, development, so on and so forth. I asked him a basic question. I said, Kali, I agree with everything. Let me ask you a question. Who are your cadre? Where are your cadre? Who are your cadre? Where are your cadre? Where is your revolutionary phalanx? Who are your foot soldiers? Who is ready to implement your plan? And his response was, well, it's not there yet. And I said, that's the point. This doesn't happen at the snap of a finger. This is a bourgeois, capitalist, imperialist, racist country at the center of empire, where the ideological superstructure is indoctrinating people into bread and circuses of nonsense. I have no problem with revolution. I have no problem with organizing to institutions of revolution. What I do have a problem is rhetorically starting with a hammer and sickle where you can't even get people to say, I like Medicare for all.
Yeah, so and I want to be clear, Pascal, like I am not one of those people who thinks that we should be like these evangelicals going and preaching communism. No. I think as an organizer, how we organize people is by one, meeting them where they're at, two, identifying the issues they care about, and then three, organizing them starting from those issues. And that doesn't mean we go and wave the hammer and sickle. No, we embed ourselves in the masses, we listen to them, we learn from them, and we meet them at their starting point. But we have to actually do that, and that doesn't mean electoral politics is all that I'm saying.
But I don't think there's any single person on this panel right now who disagrees with any.
I don't think anyone has disagreed with anyone. I think this has all just been like a little bit of like, well, there's a little bit of finer point here and there. Like we're all saying the same shit.
This is where I do agree with Esperanza. This is why I do agree with her, is that organizing has to be under the goal and auspices of the intention of radicalizing militant cadre. Without a doubt. If you think that joining DSA is going to be the best you can do to prove that you're down to challenge the status quo, that's just the beginning point.
Yeah.
Where do I take my petite bourgeois, middle class, black lawyer friend who thinks capitalism is good, doesn't understand anything about socialism, and is interested in learning? Well, what's Medicare for all? What does that mean? Well, join DSA. Here, sit down. What is Medicare for all? What is it? Okay, that person is so beyond even understanding why let us make this clear. There are people, working class, non-college educated people, who love capitalism, particularly in the kind of popular culture society we live in, where we have all kinds of music and entertainment that perpetuates capitalist realism. One thing that I talk about all the time, people are probably tired of hearing about this. This is why I love Ella Baker. Political education, political education, political education. None of this happens without deep, strong, quality political education. And my position is that the only way we get any of this is if we talk about how do we perfect our political education vehicles amongst working class and poor communities. In other words, I think we should stop talking about the agenda completely and talk about how do we structure political education effectively.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of political education, Esperanza, how did you become radicalized? Or was it a family thing? Like you just had radicals in the family, Zapatistas everywhere?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was a long process for me. You know, I think I've talked about it before. Like growing up, my dad was targeted by the state. I was a kid who grew up with a dad in prison. Later, they tried to deport him. They even sent him to the border. We were housing insecure, but I never really understood these issues as political until after dropping out of high school. I enrolled in community college, took a sociology class, and started actually thinking through things, realizing that something was deeply wrong with our society. But it took me up and down, having some anarchist tendencies, later, you know, into like social democratic tendencies. But it wasn't until right before the pandemic where I really started to think, hold on, like this Bernie campaign apparatus is not working. The Democratic Party apparatus is not working. We need something different. And that's when, in my opinion, I broke through the glass of American chauvinism and started looking at, well, what actually have, you know, parties and activists in the third world been doing? How have they been fighting back? And I learned a lot from them. And that's how I got radicalized. But I just, on the earlier point, one of the things I want to say is that, one, you know, everyone here is so concerned with having the correct political line, and that is very important. But what's the point of having the correct political opinion if you're not organizing other people into that as well? And so, you know, we have a ton of theory podcasts. Where are the podcasts that take you through organizing? Where's the podcast that says, here's how you have a one-on-one conversation with people in order to organize them or recruit them into your organization? Here's how you build an organization if you don't already have one. We need more sort of strategic, tactical training for our people. And then the second thing is that, you know, we need to stop having these self-selecting organizations, because who are the people that typically self-select to be in a left organization? It's typically very petty bourgeois. It's sort of perhaps people that are more privileged. And while that's fine, we have to organize them too. People are not going into the hood, you know, trying to talk to people. Like, you know, back in the day, people were like organizing gangs to, like, you know, give up, like, you know, pimping and other sorts of activities, and instead like join the revolutionary ranks and like actually like work for the people. Like, why aren't we doing that nowadays, you know? Because it's those people, the people that have nothing left to lose, that are going to be the most militant, the most revolutionary. And that's what I believe we need right now.
So how do you talk to someone? I mean, you spent some time in the industry. How do you get someone out of that mindset? Because you know as well as I do, it is extremely difficult to talk and sometimes organize with cats that are just so entrenched in that mindset. I'm asking because I don't know. I mean, I've dealt with them.
Yeah.
You know where I work, where I come from.
You know, honestly, like not everyone is going to be able to be reached or organized. That's just a fact. And a lot of people, especially who are older, are too set in their ways to be able to be organized or to change. But at the same time, no group of people is monotonous. There are advanced people, there's intermediate, and there's backwards. And there are people who are willing to be organized, who are willing to change. You know, people aren't stupid. Working class, poor, like oppressed people are not stupid. They get that something's wrong. But what avenues do they have to change that? Oftentimes, the only avenue they have to fix their situation is to join a gang or is to do that kind of stuff. And I think that our job specifically needs to be focused on the youth who grew up in those situations, to give them a different avenue, not this sort of, oh, like, let's help you get out of the hood, let's help you advance your own career, but like to actually join a revolutionary organization or, you know, some other kind of militant organization and realize that, like, you know, in our society, there's only two ways to get out of this. One is you could focus on your individual success, you know, maybe you become a boxer, maybe you go to school, who knows? And then you leave as an individual, but the conditions are still there and the majority of people are still there. The second option is you fight to change the problem at its root, and then you actually fix the problem. And I think we need to be doing that more.
I think that only happens if you have the cadre and you have the phalanxes and you have the workers, you have the soldiers to do that. And that's not going to happen unless you do massive political education. And there is a concrete wall of breads and circuses ideological superstructure that American capitalism is drumming into the minds of society. Look, let's be transparent. Let's be frank. Not John, but Frank. Black left podcasts, black left media does horrible in terms of black content. In terms of black content on the internet, we have the lowest numbers, we have the least interest, and we have the most insignificant in terms of garnering black audiences.
They love us in February.
You know who does better than us? Black right wingers, hoteps, black nationalists. Blow us out the ADOS, FBA, blow us out the water.
But does it go to what Esperanza and everyone is talking about when it comes to changing people's material conditions? When these people talk, they're talking about things that you can change immediately to increase, to better your material conditions. I'm going to think better. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to wish harder. When we talk about 20, 30 years down the road, and we kind of have, and I'm not saying that we are worse, I'm just saying we have these more grandiose visions sometimes. So how do we synthesize the message? And I'm asking again, I don't know the answer. I'm asking, how do we synthesize the message to shut out that noise of the colored capitalists that are very popular?
Let me make this clear. I'm glad we're having this conversation. All right. The material conditions of your terrain will dictate the revolutionary capacity of your initial movement. I didn't say the terrain will determine the success, the longevity, or the effectiveness of the revolution, but the material conditions of the terrain will have a significant effect in shaping the initial impetus of your revolutionary cadre. And what I'm saying is that the material conditions of the terrain, let's talk about in the black media sphere today, something I'm more familiar with, is that people are insanely saturated with either black capitalism or reparations discourse as the salvation for black people.
Agreed.
That's basically it.
Agreed.
What you find is that those who are saturated with black capitalism don't want to hear black socialists because they think they're all broke. Why should I listen to somebody broke tell me about how to plan my life? They're broke. What you will hear from the reparations crowd, those socialists don't care about reparations. They only want to cater to white, racist leftists. They don't care about black people. That's a fact.
What do you think, Marcus?
I mean, I think that at some point, even like the left is like, just maybe it's good to just zoom out, and even when you talk about like the 50-year counter revolution, you got to realize like that's largely why the frustrations on the left about where we are, the fact that there's no left, there's just leftists, the fact that there needs to be a mass organizing, a mass education movement in order to then have a party that can exist. And I don't know, I mean, like, this is part of it, right? Like, this conversation gets a few people thinking about, oh, hey, why isn't there a podcast or YouTube's, video of people talking about organizing and teaching others how to do so? Maybe there are, and like, we're going to start getting some good links in the Discord of people that we can chat with and everything like that. And I mean, hell, there's like a half a dozen academics that have been on this show that also do, incredible work organizing and we could have them back and have those conversations as well. But no, I mean, like, at the end of the day, I think like one of the biggest things to take away is that none of these things are going to happen overnight. We got to realize where we are, as people, as the left, and then just take the critique as such, not as insults, because at the end of the day, it's like when we talk about whatever happened after Bernie, we can understand that apparatus wasn't geared towards a left movement. It was geared towards one political campaign. Um, and then ask ourselves, well, what happened since then? What are the actual things that need to be done? Mistakes have been made. Of course, they will be made. Future mistakes will be made. Can we actually critique those things and make some decision? And I see that even like when we talk, like there's a lot of bad shit going on, like with any of the organizations, but I see, critique of the DSA in some ways, then flipping to them saying like, okay, hey, we're going to go to these international things and we're actually going to try and make some actual like moves at the international level. And that's going to get, garner some more critiques, and that's going to garner some more changes. And the Twitter sphere is going to have those arguments, but really when you're saying build out, when they even have these conversations, just go out and do it, and that's on me too, right? I got to answer more emails. I got to show up to more places, and I got to do more work. And I mean, in order to get to where we want to be, we all do.
But is there a question here I have actually for everybody? So there's a lot of emphasis here on political education as being a prerequisite to creating the cadre that you need to organize these militant organizations. And I would say I take Esperanza's point quite well that it's important as well to look at models outside of the United States. I think that's I think there are things that are perhaps not applicable, but there are always things that are applicable, and you have to find what works in your situation. But the question I have is, you can't just do political education willy-nilly. It's not, I mean, surely the question comes down to this. It's like, Pascal, you're talking about political education, right? But you're engaging, and I'm doing the same, and we're doing the same. We're engaging in us as individuals providing political education. Now, while we might be providing good information and things like that, isn't that a problem? Isn't the problem that we are not disciplined or organized or with any particular objective doing this education? Does that mean our energy is to a certain degree wasted because it's unfocused?
I think, Gene, you're absolutely correct. And I think when I first started this show with Jason, there was something I realized very quickly. And Jason and I had this conversation. I realized I've got to join political organizations. I cannot do a podcast talking to people about organizing and mobilizing around politics without being affiliated with political organizations. And I immediately joined DSA and Black Alliance for Peace. And I enjoyed both of them intentionally. Why? Because both represent totally different spectrums of the left political sphere. One is considered more kind of reformist, and one is considered, on its own terms, more revolutionary. One is generally populated by more white folk, and one is populated by Black and brown and Latino folk. And now I haven't been as active as I could be largely because of this show, but what I realize is that it's going to take organizations like those two to mobilize the strategy and the movement to do the political education. The revolution ain't starting by no podcasters. We realize that.
Where I do think though, I think that there's a large group of the academic left media people who could do the left a better favor in actually trying to, like, instead of just talking about Jordan Peterson, actually figuring out how this person is actually able to convey tangible things to other people and then mimic that, except with left ideals. This is the thing that where, like, I think there is a it's not just people on the left are bad at organizing.
Jordan Peterson's a psyop, though. He's a psyop.
Well, whatever. But like, that's the thing is, like, at the end of the day, the guy can fill stadiums, and the people that listen to them then can go out in their lives and act in a certain manner, right? And like, I think that I think that there could be a whole lot more favors done by the academic left of not just a critique of the left itself, but also of just messaging and branding things to actually help within the movement.
Marcus, I'm going to push back on that. I wouldn't trust academics, and I include myself, to lead anything. We should be doing a following, not doing a lead. Like, there's a reason, like, I never run for leadership positions and things like that. It's like, I don't think me, as a middle-class academic, is really the appropriate person to be leading a socialist organization. I think.
This is what I'm saying. Hold on. This is what I'm saying is that you got the academic left that largely eats itself, and instead of eating itself,
well, yeah, that's because
why not do what you just said, and then actually look to the people
because
and
that's
then
not why
start
they become academics. It's like people think that doctors become doctors because they want to help people, and I'll tell you, coming from a family of doctors, 90% of doctors become doctors because they have a fucking power trip and they like being like a doctor. Oh, not 90%, but a significant proportion. And academics, generally from the same class and thing background, have to, if they're going to be in a movement, they have to keep their intellectual egos in check. And that's difficult for a lot of them to do because they don't like taking orders from people who don't have the necessary credentials, because academia is a hierarchical organization that is almost feudal in structure.
So what's the point of having conversation with them? What's the point of having, like,
there's a couple things that I want to say on this. Just really briefly. Sorry, Pascal.
I said, go ahead, please continue. I want to give you the floor.
Okay, yeah. So there's just a couple things I want to say on this. So, one of the first things is that I think that we need to. Could you hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear you. You okay? Deep state.
Kuba's angry that we made
Kuba. Why would you do this, Kuba? We're in the middle of a show.
The Havana syndrome.
First my camera dies, now this.
She was about to come out with the dossier of.
I know, all the facts.
Wow, did we lose her?
But I just want to make it clear. I'm not saying.
Wait, relax, Jake, Marcus. God, shit.
Hold on.
There you go.
Okay. Full effect. Esperanza, we can hear you. I didn't do that. Who's doing that? That is not me.
Is she frozen?
Is she frozen again?
Screen right now. This is not me doing this. Gene, is that you?
It's me. I'm just
douche.
I was scaring Jason. He's thinking the ghost of Restream. Oh, we've lost Esperanza just as she
Esperanza. What is going on with the deep state Wi-Fi in Tejas?
Oh, we got a super chat. We got to read this super chat, man. This is a big one.
Super chat. Landrow, war. What is it good for? 16 billion in capitalist pockets, 0 for hungry children, education, housing, living wages, healthcare. Yes, Jean Bajalan, I'm about to walk to the UK and kick you in the ding ding.
I want to say something to Marcus about academic leftists. The problem with the left is that we have them, frankly, and that we need them in the first place.
Which, I mean, so I guess it's like, what? So maybe this is an off-air conversation, but why talk to them or about them?
I would say the reason you talk to an academic leftist is the same reason why you talk to a physicist about physics. You get someone who's an expert in a particular field to give you an analysis. Give you a perfect example. We talked to Brother Miltier about free people of color to do a left analysis of free people of color to make a metaphor to contemporary politics. Miltier, I don't even know if he's left. He might just be a Democrat, Brother Miltier. But the information he had was excellent. We took his expertise We used the education he gave, and we fit it to a left purpose.
Okay, well, Esperanza is back on the scene, crispy and clean. Can you hear us, Esperanza?
Yeah, I could hear that. Sorry about that. I'm on spotty hotel Wi-Fi. But
Dirty.
there is just two things that I wanted to say that I think are really important. The first is that I think that we cannot downplay the role of culture in organizing people. When I talk about culture, I'm also talking about things such as music, such as art. Look at the music that we have today. What kind of music are our youth? And when I say our youth, I'm talking about working class youth, black and brown youth. What kind of music are they listening to? A lot of it is very much capitalist music. How do we put out music that they could actually listen and vibe to that has our message propaganda? I think a lot about bamboo, but we can't just rely on one person. We need more of that, right? And then the second thing that I want to say is that people need to be engaged in small fights that they can win. And that's how you also organize people. So, for example, when I was organizing restaurant workers in Oakland, these people were not your politicized people. But when they got their wages stolen and we organized them and we shut down, Brickyard, for example, in San Francisco, and forced the manager to go to the ATM right then and there and pay back, thousands of dollars to his workers, that organized them. And through winning that small fight, we were then able to politicize them further. But the left is so afraid to do that kind of organizing. And I think, again, it's because it's a lot easier to talk about your politics online, to debate them, to start a podcast, than it is to actually go in the streets and organize people.
I think thank you very much for those phenomenal points, Esperanza. And I'd like to address them in terms of culture. And I love the Maoist energy. I'm a big fan of Amilcar Cabral. Amilcar Cabral, for those who don't know, was considered the Mao of Africa. And the utility of culture and revolution. As we know, Fidel was a big believer in culture and revolution and using culture to be a revolutionary aspect of the people. This is my conundrum with that. In America, the point of cultural creation and capitalist infiltration and propagation in American cultural production is so close from initial creation to capitalist marketization that I believe that we're at a stage where the capacity to create revolutionary pop culture or any culture in America is almost non-existent. There's a difference between Haiti, Cuba, the peasants of China, the people of Guinea-Bissau, who have indigenous, organic, non-marketized, non-high-tech culture that can be revolutionized in comparison to people who are already using the tools of manufactured capital to create their culture.
I mean,
there's a reason why cultural production in a third world peasant society can be revolutionized in a way that is transformative. I think that mechanism in an industrial, hyper-capitalist society like the United States, it's not impossible. It becomes profoundly difficult.
And I think, to speak to your point, Pascal, what we see in America is that when you do have insipid sort of, let's say, anti-hegemonic cultural forms, whether that's jazz, country music, hip-hop, they become reincorporated and sold back to people in a capitalist form. You go from hip-hop in the 80s, which is like highly political, whether you agree with the political message or not, but it's like overtly political, to hip-hop, which is literally just rapping about your car and the women you abused at the weekend, right? And and people consume it. And country music's the same, right? It goes from outlaw music to like crying about your pickup truck.
But that also has a lot to say about the times in which these musics kind of rise in, right? That's what we talk about in these video essays.
But it's not just the time. It's there's an infrastructure of business that can be there, that can see the see the money potential in those kind of things and reincorporate it. And it's not just in America, right? You know, a lot of the things that a lot of the trends Esperanza's talking about, they're applicable to other industrialized countries, and not just in Europe and the West. A place like Turkey, you know, you have radical forms of music, which in the 1980s, with the proliferation of recording technology and people being able to, you know, and capitalists being able to produce music and records, become, you know, just basic cheesy pop music. You see this in the Arab world with as well. So like, and you see it in China. You see it in China. The Chinese government is now all in a tizzy-wazzy about you know, people following these kind of Korean and Japanese cultural forms and the kind of like fan obsessions and things like that, you know, because these kind of things, you know, these cultural forms become extremely profitable for. So you know, I'm very skeptical about the ability of culture to do anything but reflect. I don't believe it can be a revolutionary force. I believe culture without, you know, revolutionary culture without a political program and organization behind it becomes a Che Guevara t-shirt.
This, but these things. These
real quick.
Yeah.
All right. You know, so I just want to say again, this is something where, and I'm going to just say this, and I don't mean any disrespect to you, but unless you're on the ground organizing, I really think you need to take a step back and ask yourself what qualifies you to talk about what is or is not a revolutionary vehicle, and what has the potential to be and what doesn't have the potential to be. And I say that with all due respect, because one of the reasons why I learned about how culture can be used as a vehicle to politicize, agitate, educate, and organize people was through Black organizers who were organizing Black workers and taught me about how strategy is not simply something that exists on a spreadsheet or on a wall chart, but how you have to have culture to organize people. And I've seen it. Look at some of the most successful organizations or movements here. It's not simply a strategy that can be put on a wall chart. There's a culture that develops around it.
That's your question. Well, I'm glad you said that.
And
who
so,
are those successful Black organizations in America that did that?
well, so for one, I'm talking about the National Black Worker Center, and specifically one of their organizers who taught me, and I organized under her for a very long time. But I think, again, what I'm trying to say is that when you look at some of the organizations here that are building, they have a culture that's building around them. And then the second thing is just that I think a lot of times we fall into a very much an end of history narrative, which is that we think, oh, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. Well, have you tried it? Because I have. I've been out there organizing, and I can tell you.
Yeah, and I've seen it. I've seen it operate. I've seen what exactly happens in places like Turkey, where, you know, you have this whole wave of revolutionary artists, and then a whole bunch of them get freaking bought off, put on TV channels, given record deals, and suddenly the whole music changes and things like that. The point I'm making is the without a strong militant organization behind it, these things get reincorporated. I think that's like an objective reality.
Listen,
we saw that.
My position is this: culture as a reflection of a movement should be encouraged. Culture as the basis of the politics of a movement, I think, is folly.
Yeah, but at that.
What is that?
But I don't think anyone's saying that. I think what I was trying to say with my initial point about culture is that it has to be a part of our strategy. I'm not saying the head of our strategy. I am a communist. I believe that a revolutionary party should be in the head of our strategy. But I'm just saying that, like, until we incorporate culture, we're not going to be able to organize the working class youth in this country.
Which I think, like, we've talked about this, and I think, like, we're like, I think we're like the everyone's saying the same thing, is that we've already discussed about how, and Jason is starting to plan this out of doing this local shows and everything like that, but incorporating some type of music and art to deal with that coincides with political education. But then also just understanding that if you are doing the organizing, there's going to be people there who can sing or play the guitar or paint a nice picture, and that can garner a culture. And I mean, hell, we have Napoleon the Legend in the chat earlier, having discussions with this dude about socialism, about the policies. He's constantly now creating more and more music because there's more people who are socialists that are even engaging with him and saying, hey, there's this beat and I want you to talk about this and all this. Like, these things can happen and they can,
as
move,
someone,
but it's not going to be anything. No one's going to listen to a song though and then put on the hammer and sickle cap and then start waving the red flag.
I'll say this, as someone that actually toured with a larger band that gets, and I'm not going to say their name, that gets a lot of love for being woke and being part of a bit of an activist culture. I've never seen bigger capitalists in my life using their platform to literally just sell t-shirts. But those t-shirts had, I can't even say what the t-shirt said on them because they would give it away. But it was the most kind of phony, fraudulent bullshit I've ever seen, masked with we're all about that activist life. And whenever we would try to mention things like, oh, why don't we invite, like the DSA chapter of this city here to this show, and they could set up here next to, it was kind of like falling on deaf ears.
Well, that being said, I'm all about the dad life, and I have to go and look after baby Zal. So it's a pleasure, everybody. And I shall see you.
But I want to say
it was not Rage Against the Machine.
Someone said something. Someone in the chat said something very good. Culture has to be natural. That's very important. We're talking about we need a culture. Revolutionary culture doesn't start in a laboratory. It reflects the ethos and the zeitgeist of the moment. You know what I'm saying? I don't disagree that we should have. Listen, the music of the 60s that came, whether we agree whether it was revolutionary or good or not, the politics came before the music. The music was reflecting a politics that already started. You know what I'm saying? When James Brown is saying, I'm black and I'm proud, the reason why James Brown is not saying I'm Negro and I'm proud is because Malcolm X planted the seeds of black people stop calling themselves Negro and started calling themselves black 5 or 6 years before he said that song.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with you. I do think that, a lot of things pretty much everything tails what's happening on the ground, especially in media. But my point is simply that in the United States today, the left is struggling to organize people. And I think that in order to do that, we have to have a comprehensive strategy that includes culture and that builds an independent revolutionary culture that can actually reach people, and not just any people, but in particular the youth. And what kind of youth? Working class, black and brown youth, because I believe they are the future of our movement.
That's I'm glad you said that. I want you to know, I really enjoy the points you're making, and I very much enjoy your contribution to today's show. Because first of all, I can tell that you have extensive radical revolutionary left political education. There's no question about that. You have extensive understanding of the dynamics of organizing, and you have extensive understanding and experience in revolutionary and left organizational theory. And I applaud you for that. And I really appreciate your perspective. And only because, and I would not even begin to act like I have your expertise or experience, only because my political education came from people who had that as well, I'm familiar with everything you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I'm also aware of the fact that you have to have the seeds on the ground. There's one thing I disagree with you. I believe that any movement that is based on only the youth as the future of the revolution is doomed to failure. Because the notion that youth are the leader of a revolution is a fetish of the new left of the 60s. And this is why I don't fetishize the new left of the 60s. Because in the 30s and 40s, you had 45-year-old men and women who were organizing around working class issues.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, I think that is a fair criticism. And I do believe that we need a multi-generational movement. And I think there are many, many, many older people that are far more revolutionary and radical than many young people. But what I'm saying is that I think there is a particular window in a young person's life where we can insert ourselves and organize them. And I just want to make sure that we are taking advantage of that window. And then just the only other thing that I wanted to say is that, as I'm sure we're all familiar with this quote when Kwame Ture said that, revolution becomes possible when conditions decline, but people's consciousness raises. Conditions are going to keep declining. We don't have to worry about that. But what we do have to worry about is people's consciousness raising. And I think secondary to that, which I would like to add, is organization, right? People's consciousness has to raise while conditions decline. And we have to have organized vehicles that can take people in as their consciousness raises. And so, my question to the viewers is, as conditions are declining, are you prepared to build organizations that will be able to take people in as their consciousness raises, and that will be able to agitate and organize people in order to do that? Because I think that, it's so easy for us to fall into this end of history narrative, especially with, the climate doom and all this other kind of doom in the US. But it's like, what are we doing actually in the ground in our community in order to get ourselves ready for what's coming?
Esperanza, and let me tell you, in further appreciation of you, I'm not going to ask you your age because that would be rude, but I want to tell you this: is that as disappointed as you are in the contemporary left, and you have justification in doing so, I am old enough to have been an adult in large parts of the 50-year counter-revolution from 68 to today. I'm 53 years old. And as much as I hear what you're saying about today's left, I'm laughing when you're talking about they're not enough, I'm not enough. I'd like to take you to a time machine to 1989 in America and have you say what you're saying about today's left. Because you know what was left in 1989? Literally people who were saying we got to get the Democrats back in office.
And that's what it goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that, we do have to look at what happened, to the left. We do have to look at where these organizations went to. And I guess just be humble, give ourselves a little grace, I guess would be the correct thing. Give the grand left a little bit of grace, and then say, where do we go from here? And it's not to say, because at the end of the day, what is still true is there's as much work to be done, whether we're recognizing that the left is where it is because of these, the 50-year counter revolution. You have just straight up state violence and oppression garnered towards it. This shit's going to happen. And then we can recognize this is where we are because of that. And then what needs to happen. And I think this conversation and everything that Esperanza is saying, I'll say, I heard what you were saying the first time. I knew that these people, sometimes the old motherfuckers like to argue. You don't have to worry about it.
Okay.
But that's the thing is this. I'm sorry. This is part of it though, is getting people to understand that we're still making mistakes. We can have that critique and let's continue on the next day. And then guess what? By the end of tomorrow, we're going to have some, hey, we still fucked up on X, Y, and Z. And we need to get better.
I mean, part of the problem, first of all, Esperanza, your critiques of the contemporary leftists. Number one, this is where we may disagree. I don't believe we have a left in America. We have leftists. There is no left. You have leftists.
Yeah.
Part of the problem we have in terms of the leftists we have in America is that their class makeup is antagonistic to working class organizing. We have a left in America of downwardly mobile, petite bourgeois, college-educated, professional adjacent people. Okay? As a consequence, their idea of organizing, and I will include myself in this, is basically talking about politics.
Yes. 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 And that is my biggest problem. And by the way, like I don't, you know, earlier I want to self-correct in that I don't think I'm some expert on organizing at all. But what I do want to say is that what's so frustrating to me, and I hope other people feel this way too, is that like you're saying, everybody just wants to talk about it. They want to tweet about it. They want to post on IG about it. They want to argue about it and have some like, you know, sort of self-aggrandized view of their own opinion. But it's like you're literally just shouting out into an echo chamber, into a void of zeros and ones. Like, please get out into your community and organize people. Like, please, that's what we need to be doing. Like, I don't like delete Twitter. Who cares about Twitter if you're not out in your community? And that's what I want to see more people do.
Well, Esperanza, are you going to come out here and help me talk to my community since my Spanish is muy mal?
No, you got to learn Spanish.
Who's Jason?
I thought you were going to come visit anyway.
Marcus like the dictator? No, you got to learn Spanish.
Yeah.
You got to learn Spanish. You got to learn Spanish. Talk to me.
I thought Esperanza was going to come out here and we were going to build left cadre like Sarah Connor in Terminator in Baja. No? You're not going to come help me translate? That's fucked up.
I'll buy my ticket. I'm down to come out.
Why I gotta buy a ticket? You just a car drive away. Get your ass in the car.
Suspended license.
Damn. Do you have to be a nigga all the time?
Real shit. Real shit.
Well, Esperanza, thank you so much. What is the film again? Tell us about the film again and when it's coming out.
So again, last night, our film Sell by Date, which I co-produced and am featured in, world premiered the first night of the South by Southwest Film Festival, directed by the Tony Award winning artist Sarah Jones, executive producer Meryl Streep, and we explore the question of whether the sex trade is exploitation or empowerment. We include a strong cohort of anti-imperialist, people who are sharing their critiques of the sex industry in that film. And I think that this film represents the shift in our culture away from choice feminism, away from liberal feminism, and towards a more solid critique of the sex trade as an institution that's kind of grounded in settler colonialism and imperialism, although it does show all sides. And I think that all sides are going to see their voices represented in this film.
Well, thank you very much. On behalf of Marcus and Pascal and Djene Bajalan, who is hanging out with his lovely family in the UK. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you guys. Djene, I'm trying to keep you family safe considering the crazy that's been happening.
You want to say hi?
So thank you guys very much. And on behalf of the whole crew, we are out.